No one's saying that being a referee is an easy job, but today we're diving into some moments where mistakes were clearly made. From shocking stoppages to poor submission awareness, these are some of the biggest referee blunders in MMA. The night you're debut, you only get one chance to make a first impression, and for Benoit St. Denis, his UFC debut was nothing short of a disaster. Yes, he took a serious beating, but even in that fight, he showed a lot of talent and heart. His opponent, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, wasn't an easy challenge. Though St. Denis ultimately lost, no one could question his determination to keep fighting. The real issue, however, was the referee. He let the fight continue way too long. St. Denis was taking heavy damage as Dos Santos dominated him in the middle round, but somehow the ref refused to stop it. He left St. Denis in there, relying only on his fighting spirit. In the end, Dos Santos won the fight, but what stood out even more was Dana White's immediate reaction, pulled the referee from the event right after.
We've removed guys on the middle of cards too, but this was pretty bad. Horrible.
Thankfully, in his next fight, Benoit St. Denis proved he belonged in the UFC by securing a second-round submission victory with a Von Flue choke. If you're not familiar with it, a Von Flue choke can be hard to recognize, but if you're a referee in a live MMA fight, it's definitely something you should know, especially for the sake of a fighter's safety. Chad George found himself in this exact situation. His opponent, Mark Voorhees, held onto a choke attempt for too long, which gave George the perfect opportunity to reverse it. After trapping his opponent's arm and pressing down with his shoulder, George locked in the Von Flue choke. The problem, the referee didn't recognize it. Thankfully, George did. He realized the choke was deep and knew his opponent was out cold. George even stood up and told the referee the fight was over, but unbelievably, the ref kept saying no.
No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's out.
You couldn't script a more bizarre ending. Chad George not only had to win the fight, but also protect his opponent from further harm and literally call the fight himself. The Bulldog choke. Speaking of UFC debuts, Ben Askren's first walk to the Octagon was pure chaos. After retiring 2 years earlier, most people had given up on the idea of seeing Askren in the UFC, let alone competing for the welterweight title. His debut, however, was nothing short of wild. Facing Robbie Lawler, Askren was under intense pressure right from the start. Lawler unleashed a barrage of strikes that almost finished Askren early in the fight. But in a sudden turnaround, Askren began to recover. He eventually tied Lawler up, got to his back, and locked in a Bulldog choke. Askren went from merely losing to securing a dominant position in just about a minute. When referee Herb Dean stepped in to stop the fight, it seemed like one of the greatest comebacks ever. The problem? Robbie Lawler wasn't actually unconscious.
That's tight. Oh, he's going out. He's out. He's out. He's out. Ben Askren submits right out. He wasn't out. He wasn't out. He wasn't out.
Herb Dean mistook Robbie Lawler's arm dropping as a sign that he was out, so he ended the fight. Even though Askren had done an amazing job turning the tide, the stoppage created an awkward vibe in the cage, taking away from what had been an incredible round of action.
When he checked, I gave him the thumbs up and looked right at him. I was like, hey man, fuck, I'm good.
The single leg. Although MMA has evolved a lot over the years, the old school one-night tournaments were truly something special. These days, commissions wouldn't be quick to approve events where fighters compete multiple times in one night, but back then, it was pretty exciting while it lasted. For legendary Pride icon Kazushi Sakuraba, his first UFC appearance showed just how much a tournament format could work in a fighter's favor. He faced Marcus Silveira, a 240-pound Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, in only his second pro fight. Early on, Sakuraba took some hard shots to the chin, but nothing that should have ended the fight. Amidst the chaos, Sakuraba saw his chance to shoot for a single leg takedown, hoping to turn the tide. But Big John McCarthy misread the situation. He thought Sakuraba's quick movement meant he had lost consciousness and stopped the fight. The mistake was clear as day, but unfortunately, there was no one doing it. Thankfully, due to the tournament format, Sakuraba got a rematch with Silveira just a few hours later. This time, he caught him in an armbar and claimed the UFC Japan heavyweight tournament title in just over 3 minutes. Justice was served that day, but this remains one of the biggest referee blunders you'll ever see. The eye poke TKO. During Anthony Johnson's early UFC run as a welterweight, he suffered one of the strangest losses you'll ever see. A referee mistake that's truly an elite of its own. Facing Kevin Burns in 2008, Johnson had to deal with repeated eye pokes from his opponent. By the third round, a cracked retina left him unable to continue.
And Johnson's so quick. You don't have time to bring those hands up and block.
Literally just straight up in the air.
He's using those push kicks well.
He's landed some nice shots.
Oh my goodness!
Looked before as if that uppercut landed hard, but it did not. It's the poke entirely.
If that wasn't bad enough, the referee in question, Steve Mazzagatti, declared Burns to be the victor of the bout by TKO, and yes, you heard that correctly, the fighter responsible for the repeated eye pokes was given a finished victory. On his record, naturally, Johnson attempted to appeal this verdict, but was sadly unsuccessful. However, true justice was served in their eventual rematch 5 months later, where Rumble scored a knockout of the night, winning. Head kick to settle the score, the Filipino wrecking machine Mark Munoz is a real fan favorite known to us all as a genuinely nice guy who just so happened to be a world-class middleweight fighter. And for those who turned in to watch him, put his 4-fight win streak up against the rise and contender Chris Weidman. The bout's conclusion was an especially tough one to watch given how easily it could have been avoided after taking a massive elbow to the face from the All-American Munoz was all but finished there and then, but for some reason the fight was not called off and Weidman was forced to hammer down with at least 15 strikes that went completely unanswered.
He rocks him on the way out. He is out. They're going to stop this fight.
Josh Rosenthal, who was the referee that night, was rightly criticized for his slow response to the finishing sequence, leaving Munoz to take far more damage than he ever should have.
I could see from way up here this fight needed to be stopped. As a matter of fact, I was yelling, pleading, and begging. I don't know what took so long. Mark Munoz and all athletes are counting on that referee to keep you safe.
It's hard to say how much of an effect it had, but Mark Munoz was never the same fighter after his bout with Chris Weidman. He went 2-3 in his next 5 fights before retiring from the sport in 2015. While this fight earned Weidman his first shot at Anderson Silva, for most fans, it left a sour taste in our mouths. The tap, bad stoppages, whether they're from TKOs or submissions, are rarely overturned by athletic commission. So when a 2015 submission was declared a no contest, it really showed how terrible the stoppage was. Drew Dober has been making a name for himself in the lightweight division, but early in his career, he was on the receiving end of one of the most baffling stoppages in MMA history. Facing Leandro Silva, Dober was caught in a tight guillotine choke. Silva had a strong attempt, but Dober was doing everything right. As the commentators pointed out, he had just managed to pull his head free and escape. But right at that moment, just as Dober freed himself from danger, the referee jumped in thinking he saw a tap. The fight was stopped on the spot. Dober was understandably confused, and fortunately, the bout was ruled a no contest due to the referee's mistake, and the loss was erased from his record. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.